Welcome to another episode of Wild and Well. Today, I am talking to Dr. Kim Van Dusen. She's a licensed family therapist, a registered play therapist, the founder of The Parentologist, and she's the author of the new book, Parenting Through Play. We are today going to be talking about, not surprisingly, play in parenting. So, why it's important, how we can become more playful as parents, and so much more. So, welcome, Dr. Kim. Thank you so much for coming on today. But before we get into all of that, can you tell us one thing that you've done for yourself today to take care of you?
Yeah, that's a great question because I feel like a lot of times moms, I'll speak for myself as a mom, I feel like our needs are usually on the last burner, barely even having it ignited. So, one thing I did for me today is I took a shower and I blew dry my hair, and sometimes I don't get to do that. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes that's just a big luxury to be able to have 45 minutes to just have to myself to get ready and to feel composed for the day, whatever that brings. So honestly, that was a big win for me because I didn't get to do that yesterday. And I don't know if I'll get the chance tomorrow because I'm traveling. So I think that was something that felt like a little nice to have my hair done and put on some makeup and just feel a little bit more like me today.
Yeah, it is so important. And that can seem like something that's superficial, but it's not. It's about taking care of yourself in any way that works for us, right? Like when you do your hair and you have time for that, it can feel so special, can't it? And you show up so differently when we do put that self-care in, don't we?
Oh, for sure. I mean, even just as little as, brushing my teeth, or for goodness sakes, if I can say this, putting on a bra. Like, there's just little things, throughout the day. And I actually talk about this in my book, but just, checking in with yourself and saying, have I gone to the bathroom today? Have I drank enough water? Have I eaten anything? I mean, there's so many times like you skip a meal or it's been hours since you've done, drank water or gone to the bathroom, and you think, gosh, because you just get so involved with everything else that even just those little check-ins and just making sure those little basic needs are met, it really goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you share a little bit about you and what it is that you do and a bit about your new book?
Yeah, exactly. Well, first, I always say that I'm a mom of two. I have a daughter and a son, and that is my favorite job. That's my best job, my most rewarding job, my most challenging job at times, but it's my favorite one. So I always like to start with that. I did get my doctorate in psychology and became a licensed marriage and family therapist, and then specialized in play therapy. So I had to go through extra coursework and extra education and clinical hours to become an official registered play therapist. Then I became a podcaster and a blogger, and started my journey on Instagram, which has led to all sorts of wonderful things and different conferences and working with amazing brands that focus on the family and education, child safety, things like that. And now I've started the journey of becoming an author. So all the while, over the years, having almost 20 years of experience in private practice. I also worked many years in schools, preschools, elementary schools. So working with the 0 to 10 child population. I do specialize working with children in play therapy, but I've also worked with a lot of adolescents and teenagers, young adults, and then their parents in doing family sessions as well. So I just I love changing lives. And so that's why I went into all of this in the first place, was to support parents, help parents, specifically moms, since that's, who I am and who I was, when I started this. And so it's really exciting to finally see some of my techniques and interventions that I've used for years, professionally and personally, in this book on paper, to hopefully give to the world as a gift, to say, here's all my secrets, and I'm going to give them to you now, and, to change your life. So it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, it is so exciting. And I think it's so important to have this in a book because you can get that out to so many more people. And I just find books are one of the most amazing things because they're quite affordable and they have so much information. Like 20 years of your work is in that. Where can we
And 20
access
years of
that?
stories. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of surreal, And one of the first books that came out, it's called Playful Parenting by Lawrence Cohen. And that book is 20 years old, but it stands the test of time. I mean, people still, every time I bring up my book, they say, have you read this book? And that was from 20 years ago. And so this is, definitely very different in many ways, and a much more of a modern take on the everyday parent. But hopefully in 20 years, people are still quoting my book. And, since it's so evergreen and can help, not just this generation that's parenting now, but, in generations to come. So it is exciting. And I have shared lots of clinical stories of things that happened back when I was in practicum, like you said, back in like 2007 or 2008 or something like that. So that doesn't change the quality of the story, even if it is, a decade or two old. It definitely still helps parents just the same now. So it's very exciting.
And why is play so important?
Oh gosh, how much time do we have? No, it really, I mean, play is important. I think, as a society, I've learned through the years with the work that I do, and even now trying to get this book out in the world, is that there's a lot of people that just hear the word play and completely shy away from it immediately. Whether it's the anxiety around play, maybe they didn't have a lot of play, growing up, they don't value play, or they think, well, I'm an adult now, play isn't for me, or I've heard even people say, oh, that book isn't for me because my child is this age, or, my child doesn't deal with that particular situation or whatever it is, or my child's not diagnosed with anything, or, whatever. And, I want to say, no, this book is for you, really and truly, the techniques interventions I use in my book are really for toddlers. I would say 2.5 years old, all the way through, into middle school. So about, 11, 12 years old. So pretty much that whole time from toddlerhood until they get into middle school. And even so, I have a middle schooler this year. My daughter's in sixth grade. And there's still so many times I use a lot of the same techniques that she responds to. And I know she's my daughter. And so she probably humors me a little bit because she knows this is what she's used to her whole life. But I do it with her friends too, and they seem to like it and respond to it. So really, it's not based on your child's age or even developmental level. A mom came to me the other day and said she has a 25-year-old son who has a lot of developmental delays, and says that she uses a lot of the same techniques with her 25-year-old. So it's not necessarily even about age; it's where your child's at developmentally, cognitively, things like that. So, and going back to the importance of play. Play is how children conceptualize their world. It's how they understand it and make sense of it. It's their language. So when you're trying to parent your child in a way that makes sense to you as the adult, it's not necessarily going to come across the same to your child. And two things are going to happen. They're going to completely just shut down and withdraw, or they're going to push back and become defiant because they don't understand that language. I use this metaphor a lot recently in as I'm talking about the book, and I didn't put it in the book, but I should have because I feel like every time I say it, people like they get it. Quickly, I'll just share that, when two dogs meet, they connect through sniffing, right? They connect through sniffing even each other's behinds, which sounds really absurd, of where I'm going with this, but stay with me for a moment. So then when two adults connect, we connect through talking, right? Hi, how are you? What's your name? How many kids do you have? What do we have in common? We try and find those commonalities through talking. That's where we get our connection. And then you think about how two kids connect, and they connect through play. When they're at the park or on a play date, they'll say, hey, do you want to play with me? Or, with their neighborhood kids or siblings, the first thing out of their mouth is, do you want to play with me? And so that says a lot. So just as absurd as it sounds that adults would connect through sniffing is just as absurd as saying that kids will connect by talking. It's just they're different languages. And so communicating with kids through play and speaking their language will not only help you connect, but it also, will help, better behavior around the house, let's say, and a more peaceful home as well.
Yeah, it is so important. And yet, I think so many of us, myself included, will resist it. Like, there's so many times where I know consciously and from experience, if I'm playful and present in that way with my kids, everything goes easier with parenting. And yet, there are moments where I probably have low blood sugar and I'm grumpy and I'm busy and I'm just resistant to it. And I know other parents that like I've worked with and friends as well who have had similar experiences. Why do we resist this thing that is actually going to make parenting easier?
Yeah, I love this question because you're so right. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the part I'm talking about where I need to almost convince parents, that this is really and they'll say the same thing. Well, when I do it, it does work. But then I don't do it all the time. I'm like, well, why not? It makes your life easier. But I think we resist it because we think it's going to be harder. We think, oh, play takes energy, play takes time. And sure, it does. But when you're having a power struggle with your child and they're having a tantrum or they're being defiant and they're, you're middle of this, constant power struggle, that takes a lot of effort and time too. So they're both going to take time and effort, but would you want it to be in a more positive, peaceful way or, a yelling, defiant, crying, tantrum way? So, that's my point is it does work. And, I think a lot of times parents have anxiety around play, like I said, it comes down to, do I have the time? Do I have the energy? Well, yes, you do. It's almost like when you go to the gym or even like self-care. You think, oh, this is going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort. I don't have the energy for that. I can't fit it into my schedule. There's not enough time to take, a couple of deep breaths just to regulate myself, right? Or like for me personally, going to the gym sometimes sounds very daunting. I have to get in my workout clothes. I have to drive to the gym or even walk to my community gym, but it still takes time. It takes me, maybe 30 minutes to an hour to work out and then come home and probably take a shower. And to me, it just sounds like, oh my gosh, that is the last thing I have time for. That's the last thing I want to do. But when I do work out, it's not only good for my physical health, but it's good for my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health. And there's so many benefits to it. It increases all those endorphins and serotonin and dopamine, all those really good hormones that we want. And the play does the exact same thing. Play increases our serotonin, our dopamine, our endorphins, all those happy hormones. And yes, it might take some time and energy, but at the end of the day, you're going to feel you have more energy and you're still going to have time to get things done. It's just about shifting your perspective and prioritizing play on the forefront instead of, well, once you get your homework done, then you can play. It should be, backwards. Let's play for a little bit. Let's get all of our wiggles out. Let's, just have some fun. And then when it comes time to doing homework, doing chores, doing those types of things, children are going to be more compliant and more apt to participate because they've already gotten the play first.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, even though I definitely have my moments where I don't put it into practice. But I guess if we have that mindset and that buy-in to know like why play is so important and does make it easier, after that, it just is almost like a skill that it just takes practice for us to work on. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like riding a bike, and it does take a little it's the shift that comes first. Once you have that, and once you put some of these things into practice, it's just like hopping on the bike and then riding it. I mean, it will come more naturally to you. Some parents it might come a little more naturally than others. And and you said this, and I think this is very important to mention is that even for myself, I have those days where I'm on running on low. I've had very, busy days, stressful days. I didn't get any sleep. I haven't really eaten much. I'm not regulated. And on those days, I do resort back to, maybe having a shorter temper, a low frustration tolerance for, whatever they're doing. Maybe I might be overstimulated and then just telling me about their day and talking might be too much. So we're all going to have those days. So we don't have to do this every day. I would just say, but again, if it's that mindset shift, then you're going to be doing it most days because that's your go-to. It won't be the what like the resistant part, even when we are tired, even when we are hungry or frustrated, or it's we're still going to go back to that because we know that it's not only going to make us feel better, but it's going to make our kids feel better too. And that's just going to feel good all around. So that's going to be the choice we make, most of the time going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even like it maybe we can be more playful and more active with them when we do have more energy, but when we are low and we are resistant or like low on energy and resistant to the play, maybe it's just about putting on a silly voice or like singing a song with the words that you want to like say instead and just do like little things like that that don't actually take more time, but still bring in that playfulness to it.
Yeah, I honestly, I do try to dispel the myth that play means sitting on the floor for 30 minutes every day and having active communication and dialogue with your kids. It's not. Those are nice. If you have time for that and the energy, I mean, do it. All those moments are very important to have active play with them. But like you said, and what I really share in my book is those micro practice play pockets of participation that you have throughout the day that might just mean like even the other day we were my son it was I think we were sitting at the counter and I think we were eating and he didn't like what I put on the table, very typical situation. And he kind of had his head, maybe he was tired, he had his head on the counter. All I remember is my husband, who isn't usually the play one, like usually that's me, and he's the more, go to your room, or he definitely puts on more of the consequence kind of if they're not behaving. And but I was sitting there, and my husband, of all people, who also was very resistant, like I said, to this play. So if I can convince him, and the most resistant play parent, which I would think he's one of them, then I feel like I did my work in my book. But he turned to my son, and he just literally, he's like, "Oh, it looks like you have low energy." And he took his hand and he wound up his back like a robot, or like a, like a toy that you wind it up and then it starts moving. And or he says like your batteries are low, and he'll like insert batteries in his back. And then my son literally responded immediately, and he got off from the counter, sat straight up, and was like, "Yes, I'm ready to go," like a robot. And then he started eating his dinner again. And I was like, "Oh my gosh," like that's all it takes sometimes, is just little shifts like that. Or one I share in the book is, when it comes to mealtime, instead of giving your kids a fork if they're being resistant to what is on their plate, give them a little set of tongs. I got a whole set of colorful tongs, mini ones that kids can use, for like less than $10 on Amazon. And sometimes with my kids don't want to eat, I say, "Hey, do you want to bring up the tongs?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And it's like a whole fun thing. And I didn't really do anything. All I did was get a set of tongs instead of a fork. So again, it's like you said, it's those little things throughout the day. It's not those big chunks of playtime. It's just how you respond and how you playfully, hold up a banana, or your fingers to make a cell phone, and call your kids and say, "Hey, do you know why so and so's not eating his dinner tonight?" "Yeah, I don't know either," but it's just things like that that anyone can incorporate in their day very, very easily.
A lot of the parents that I work with at the moment, a lot of the work I do with them is around picky eating. And so there's a lot of mealtime battles going on. Do you have other strategies for if mealtimes just are stressful for both parents and children? Like, what else can we do in those moments to just make that a
Yeah,
little bit easier?
yeah, for sure. Like I said, it's such a prominent situation that comes up, and it's come up for me for many years in the clinical room as well. That I wrote a whole chapter on it because it's so prominent, and I think so relatable to so many parents. And so I'll just throw a couple of them out there. Besides the tongs, that's my favorite one because it's the easiest one, and it's, like I said, it doesn't take any time, really any effort. And anyway, so one thing I can do too is, a lot of kids get restless at mealtime. Sitting down at the table, especially when they're little, is really hard for them. Their attention span is very low, and if sometimes a lot of kids don't eat big meals, they eat little meals. And so serving, instead of serving it in on a plate, serve it on a big ice cube tray. There's not the small ice cube trays, but kind of a bigger one that has a little bit bigger squares in it, and just put little things in it, like put a couple carrots in one, put some hummus in another, put some cucumbers in the next one, maybe some type of protein, in the next one, some grilled chicken or something. And then you just, put some soft foods, some hard foods, vary the texture and type of food, and then serve it in the ice cube tray. So even just what you serve it in might help. Or sometimes what I'll do is I'll put down, like, I have this big sheet of white paper. You really don't need the big sheet. You can just use a piece of, uh, you know, I would say Xerox paper, but Xerox is the name of the printer. But the copy paper that you use, right? Any type of paper, but if you get a big one of those big kind of butcher paper type ones, again, not very expensive, and you can use it for months and months and months. Kind of put it out, almost like when you go to those restaurants and they have those big papers, and then you get some crayons, and while the kids are eating or in between bites, they get to draw something, and it can be even fun where you're sitting around the table, and you can say, "Okay, let's all draw a marine animal," and then the whole table, even the parents, join in and draw a marine animal, or just the kids do. But having like different things that you can only do during mealtime, like the drawing, or like using the tongs, like that's just saved for mealtime. Certain things that will make mealtime fun and inviting. That again, don't take a ton of time. And then again, what you serve it in. One time I served my son lunch in his dump truck when he was younger, and he loved it. Or I also talk about doing one of those electric trains. Like if someone has an electric train, put the food in the back of the train, like one of those sushi conveyors. And as it's going around and round, the kids can eat. And it just makes it fun. Or, cutting things out in certain shapes. So sometimes it doesn't take much. It just takes, those little modifications at mealtime, but making it inviting and fun so they have a good relationship with food, and they have a good relationship to mealtime. So it's not driven by anxiety, it's driven by play.
Yeah, those are great strategies. And just going back to the tongs, like for my second son, my youngest, I think tongs were his favorite toy for like years and years. So if I ever brought those out at mealtime now, like he's older now, he's 7, but I'm sure he would be thrilled. So I'm going to try that.
Oh, you should. He'd love it. My son is 9 now, and I do it for him all the time. Even my 12-year-old would like it, but my 9-year-old son absolutely loves it. And sometimes he'll ask, "Hey, can we eat with tongs tonight?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" I think that's the thing too, is sometimes we think some of those things when our kids ask, and I have a whole chapter on this on saying yes more than no. It's called the yes attitude. But sometimes when our kids have those asks, it seems like a lot to us at the time. So we just impulsively say no because we might think it takes longer to clean up or whatever the case may be. But, if my son asks, I think, well, why not? Sure, you can eat with tongs tonight. Maybe I wasn't intending that, or, a lot of times we're kind of getting our routine and our, oh, that's not what we planned. So I can't do that. It's hard to shift that. But if we can take a moment and say, why not? What's the worst that could happen here? Well, nothing really. Maybe it's one more dish I have to, clean or whatever the case is, and get the tongs out. So it's just a lot of times just pausing for a moment and saying, well, can this be, a play-based situation, or can I say yes to this request? And if it is, then why not? So
Yeah, it's good for us to think about like how many times we go around saying no throughout the day and how many times we say yes. And that can be really hard for our kids if all they're hearing is no, no, no. And we do have to keep boundaries and rules in place for their safety and for like them to be appropriate in certain situations socially, but giving them some autonomy and power and us saying yes more often could be really helpful. What other situations, like how can we bring more yes into our parenting?
yeah, I mean, I think that's you kind of hit the nail on the head there. And and I think one time I even had a parent, it was a client of mine, because her daughter and her just were clashing, just having a lot of power struggles, a lot of head-to-head arguments. And the daughter said, well, she just never says yes. And then I think on top of that, it wasn't just the yes, it was there was no alternative. There was no the daughter didn't have a lot of choices, didn't feel empowered. And so she was fighting for that power, fighting for that agency, fighting for that autonomy. And so I had the mom make a list of every time she said yes versus every time she said no. And of course, her daughter was old enough to help her make this list. She would, make sure she held her mom accountable. And the next session, the next week, it came out where the no's were more than double of what she said yes. And I think what parents miss too is the why. Why are we saying no? And when can we have it? So let's just say hypothetically, and again, I write this in my book, like if your child asks for an entire chocolate cake, that's going to be a hard no because they're going to make themselves sick and you just know better. Do they need a piece? Maybe. Do they need a piece after lunch? Possibly. They may not get it now, but let them know the why. Well, that's going to make you sick, and I don't want your tummy to feel icky all day, or but after lunch, I'll give you a piece, but not the whole cake. Sometimes it has to come down to negotiating with them a little bit and kind of coming up with a conclusion together. Letting them have that voice, letting them feel heard, seen, loved, it just will help in itself that they're part of the decision making process. They're not just being told no because they're being told by no by every adult possible. They're, depending on their age, their teacher, their coach, their parent, two parents, maybe sometimes even three if there's other caregivers in the home. So, give them more choices, give them more empowerment, say yes more than no, because again, it either comes down to our need for power and control or our anxiety. And if we're saying no because of one of those two things, then you're actually doing yourself and your child a disservice versus just saying yes and taking a deep breath and saying, okay, it might take long for me to clean this up, or, this wasn't in my plan for the day and I have to let go, relinquish some of that control. Then, for the betterment of your relationship with your child and your home and in your own sanity, it might just be easier to say yes in the moment, or say not right now, but maybe later. Let's work on this solution together.
I really like that you bring up there that the parent, like we need to look at why am I saying no? Is this about my own anxiety or my own need for control and power? And to reevaluate if that is the case, because I think we can just automatically say things and we think, oh, I'm the parent, so I'm right. But we're not necessarily always right, especially if our behavior is driven by one of those two things.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, there still needs to be healthy limits and boundaries. When it comes to safety, there's a lot of hard no's, because our brains are already fully developed as adults and our kids aren't. And now I feel like I've been reading, I forget what I actually wrote in the book because at the time that's what research was saying, but now new research is saying that kids' brains aren't even developed to maybe 25 or 26 years old. That's a long time. So if you have a 6-year-old, they have 20 years of brain development before they can use that prefrontal cortex to be able to make good decisions. Until then, there is going to be a lot of risky behavior. There is going to be a lot of things that they're going to do impulsively without thinking, or, just wanting things in the moment, a very egocentric type way of thinking. But if you think about it, and think about, well, their brains aren't developed yet. So we do know better in some situations. But again, like letting them be a part of that conversation instead of just saying no, that's the final word. I feel like growing up, that's, the generation of how I was parented was, I'm the adult, you do as I say. Or, just because I said so, all those sayings that we grew up as, we just had to deal with it. It was just, there was no, we didn't have a say. But now, and then we shifted and kind of overcompensated, I feel like, where some newer generation of parents have been saying, oh, let's do this, very gentle, conscious type parenting, where it almost became where the kids were parenting, or the kids were in charge of the parents. And that I feel like there's been some backlash on that too, and has grown to a lot of things like entitlement, or even again a lot of aggressive behaviors. Like I'll talk to parents now that kind of went that route because they were pushing back so hard on the way they were raised that we went in the completely opposite direction and gave kids mostly all the power. And then we didn't have any left. So as they've grown up, maybe it worked when they were little, but then as they've grown up, and now they're running the show and they're being very defiant in their teenage years, et cetera, et cetera. That maybe that's for book 2, so I'll stop there. But my point is that my philosophy on parenting is what I share in the book is, kind of meets parents in the middle, where yes, there is a lot of choice, there is a lot of empowerment, a lot of autonomy, a lot of agency, and I show you in the book how to get there and how to do that. But then there also is those healthy limits and boundaries, because when you do need to set them, once you have that foundation of safety and trust that you get through play and that you gain through that relationship and the connection with your child, once you have that, and then when you need them to comply or you need them to understand why you're saying no, you already have that safety net. You already have that foundation. So compliance is much easier, and they'll accept it more because they respect, oh, well, she'll say yes again in the future. This isn't just, this is just one time she's saying no. Or they'll understand, well, next time she'll give me a choice, or maybe even give them a choice. Like, you can't have that cake now, but do you want it after lunch or after dinner? They're still getting that empowerment because they feel like, oh, I have a choice when I get the cake. Well, I want it after lunch because it's probably sooner. That's probably the route they're going to take. But some might not. Some might want to get excited about it the whole day and decide to have it at dinner time instead. But, give them a little more of that agency as you're setting the limit, and they'll feel much better about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think you're absolutely right that the parenting continuum has really swung from being really strict in past generations to a bit more possibly too permissive. And now a lot of people are trying to find that middle ground. So I like that that's where you're at. And I think that also using play in that place is so helpful, isn't it? Because it helps to foster that relationship with our children. But then it's not to say that they're in charge or that there are no boundaries, but we can be playful and loving and connected while also holding firmly to those boundaries.
Yes, absolutely. So important. Again, I the whole chapter just on limits and boundaries. So, it's I really do try to guide, parents, and we intentionally made it a paperback so it's, obviously lower cost, so it's more affordable to the everyday parent. We intentionally made it a paperback so parents can put it in their diaper bag or just in their purse, have in their car, just it's very portable and easy to, even traveling, it's, less weight to bring around if you're on a vacation and you need it, in the moment. But one thing I didn't mention yet, and you might be getting to it, but while it's on my mind, yes, the title says parenting through play, which again sounds very niche. But in the book, I actually combined 3 evidence-based programs, play therapy being one of them, solution focused therapy being the second one, and positive behavior interventions and supports, PBIS is what a lot of people know it as, being the third. And when those 3 are combined, it's the trifecta of how to get this deeper connection, better communication, better behavior, things like that. But it's really the combination of the 3. So there's been books on, maybe one of those, but never, not one. This is the first time this ever, all 3 of them are combined. And again, they all work really well together. Again, they're all research backed, but they all complement each other so well that when combined, it's almost like the secret I've been holding on to for all these years of saying, wait, this is the great, like you said, that balance between those different types of parenting coming together for this new kind of style, that really has been missing in our parenting world for generations.
Yeah, how interesting. I'm really interested to read the book and see those combined because I think so often when we do combine different modalities, it strengthens all of them and it works a lot better. It's hard to just work in one or the other, but together things actually you really fix the situation or make improvements with whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have more than just one, one modality to focus on. Like you can pull from different ones and use them either, together at the same time or just one different one at the time you need the most, depending on what your situation is that you're dealing with. So, but yeah, I'm hoping to bring all those years of experience and all three of those that I have a plethora of years and years of experience in all of them and bringing it from the therapy room to someone's living room to their home to say this is how you can use those things that I've used as a therapist for all these years and as a mom now for the last 12 years, and use it in your home with your own kids. So they're very therapeutically based. I have a lot of things in there, even for neurodivergent children and a neurodiverse population. So it's not just, it's going to work for most children, I would say. If they need a higher level of care, some of the concepts may not, because they're probably need, like I said, that higher level. But for most children, most of the concepts work, whether you have a neurotypical or a neurodivergent child. I talk a lot about the sensory system and sensory seekers, sensory avoiders, and different things you can do in a play-based way to help them. If it means, getting more sleep at night, bedtime's a struggle. We talk a lot about mealtime, but we know bedtime usually is a struggle. Getting kids out the door in the morning, transitions, all of those things, and how to manage them better as a parent. And again, it's not just to help your child, but it's also to help you and support you as the parent. So it's a little bit easier for you.
Yeah, I think probably every parent has experienced the power struggles and the pushing and the being resistant to play and just how exhausting that is. Like that takes so much of our energy. So if we can do anything to make it easier, like and to benefit everybody and to build that connection with our kids in the meantime, like why wouldn't we do this?
I know that's my question to everybody too. But sometimes getting that idea across in a 30-second reel or, this is why I love podcast interviews, because even when you're on TV, you're on, live for 5 minutes. Like there's only so many questions and how deep you can get. So that's, my struggle is just really getting out all of these concepts in the world. And maybe it just means the book being out in the world and then just a mom telling another mom and saying, hey, I read this book. This is how much it's helped me and my child. You should read it too. And maybe it's just word of mouth that just needs to, like I said, stand the test of time over the next 20 years. That'll help. But the people that get it, like yourself, the people that believe in it and support it and say, yes, I know for a fact as a parent, this would help and it would change my life or, change this mom's life. Those are the people I appreciate and I'm so grateful for because once you get it, it's life changing. But you have to be willing to accept the new kind of style of parenting, if you will, and be willing to try it, not just for one day and be like, oh, it didn't work. I'm not gonna, or even just be resistant to try it in the first place. Once you try it and give it a good go, I think it really will. Yeah, it really will change lives. So hoping for that.
And can you tell us like where we can find your book and where we can find out more about you? And are there other ways that people can learn from you? Like you have a podcast and you're on social media. Do you work with people still one-on-one?
Yeah, actually, I'm posting this week on if you pre-order the book, then you get a free 30-minute parenting consult with me, which I think is huge. So hopefully parents take advantage of that. We'll see how popular it is. If it starts getting big, then I may need to cut it off to a certain amount. But I started my Instagram in 2015. Just over 10 years ago in hopes to help parents in hopes that I can just walk alongside parents, support them with these techniques and interventions. So the best place I would say to find me first would be my website, theparentologist.com. That's where you can find links to my socials, my podcast, links to buy the book, things like that. The book is going to be sold wherever books are sold. So if you go to Amazon, if you go to Barnes and Noble, if you go to your independent bookseller, wherever you buy your books, there's lots of links on my website, or you can just if you just type in parenting through play or my name, it should pop up on most of those websites. It's out May 5th. So depending on when you're listening to this, it's either on pre-order and you can still get it now, which is very important for those pre-orders, or you can get it after May 5th and have it on your doorstep before Mother's Day, which is a great treat for all of us moms. And then, yes, my podcast is called the Parentologist Podcast, and you can find that on Apple, Spotify, and I also post some on YouTube as well.
Amazing. Well, that's really generous of you to be offering that free one-on-one session. So,
Yeah, well, to get it, you have to go to the Instagram, and it's going to be at the Parentologist. I forgot to mention that. So that's where I'm most active. I'm on, I think, every platform, from Pinterest to TikTok to Threads to X, whatever it's called now. You can find me typically anywhere at the Parentologist, but Instagram is where I'm most. But yes, I'm going to be offering that just because I want it. I don't want it to be about the royalties from the book, or if it's a bestseller, or I want parents to buy it because I truly and genuinely want to support them. And so by offering my services and connecting with them on that deeper one-on-one level, I'm hoping that it's definitely going to go into the hands of parents that really need it. And that's really why sort of this entire business in the first place is to go back to that mentality of helping and supporting others. So
yeah, amazing. And was there anything here that you wanted to mention or you wanted me to ask that we didn't cover that you think would be important?
no, I think you asked really good questions, honestly, and I think I got across everything I wanted to share about, especially when it comes to the book. Again, I just, going back just to wrapping it up of, if you're not sure if this book is for you, I would say get it for a friend and see what their thoughts are on it, and then maybe they can convince you. I've been telling my friends who say, "Oh, my kids are too old now," or I don't deal with picky eating, or whatever it is. Then I'll just say, okay, that's fine. You can still support me. You can still buy the book and gift it to a mom. Gift it to your local library. Gift it to those little, I don't know what they call them. Those little libraries that in front of people's houses. They're like those little.
Yeah, like
Uh,
the free libraries. I can't remember. Oh, what is the name?
yeah, I'm
Like
pulling
book
a blank.
exchanges or something.
Yeah,
I can't.
but or take it to your gym, like a a gym that moms and kids go to, and donate it to them, and just leave it somewhere at the park, on a bench at a park where lots of kids are playing. One parent will pick it up that needs it. So if you don't think you need free sell, do other moms a favor by buying it and then gifting it to someone, even if it's just a stranger. Leave it on a table at Starbucks or something. They might throw it out maybe at Starbucks. I don't know. I hope not, because I give them a lot of my business. So hopefully they wouldn't. But there's book clubs everywhere, and different things. And I say, still give it to a mom that you think needs it, because that might be her saving grace of what she actually needs, and you'd be doing both of yourselves, a good deed by doing that.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for the work that you do and for writing this book and for helping parents navigate all the challenges that come up in parenting in a way that serves both parent and child. I really appreciate it. So thank you for that. And all the links to your book and your website, your podcast, everything we'll put in the show notes as well. But I just like when people mention it on here because sometimes we don't look at show notes. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure being here.